Hello, everyone. I am Tina Swithin, author of Divorcing a Narcissist, founder of One Mom's Battle, the Family Court Awareness Month, which is coming up in November. And I'm also the CEO of the High Conflict Divorce Coach Certification Program. Fine print, I am not an attorney, and I am not qualified to give you legal advice by any stretch of the imagination, so always consult with your attorney before you make any decisions or changes to your case or your strategy. We are very much a community of survivors who come together and talk about divorcing a narcissist or child custody issues when a narcissist is involved. Today, I wanted to talk about how do you help your child to feel empowered when your hands are tied legally. So this is a question that came through on our Instagram for a series I do every Friday live, and that's Coffee with Tina, where we talk about all of these difficult topics and we answer your questions and open them up for community conversation and collective wisdom. So I re-record it here on YouTube because I know so many people do not have Instagram or Facebook, and so you still need to hear important content. So I've seen this question come through with a variety of different spins on it, and I can always feel the helplessness behind this question. And I know those feelings very well because I've lived them, and I've been there, and I have walked this path for a really long time. So whenever I'm pondering these questions for our time here together, I naturally see the question through my own lens of personal experience, but it's also very important to me that I look at it through the wide angle lens of the cases that I've had the opportunity to either be a part of or follow over the past 13 years. So my mind automatically dissects this question into two completely different categories. So just to repeat the question again, what do we do when we, need to have our child feel empowered, but our hands are tied legally? And so the first part of that question, our hands are tied legally, and this is real talk, and it's painful. It's an understatement to say that our hands are tied legally. Something that I recently said to one of my team members is that when you step foot into the family court system, you are essentially signing away your rights as a mother. And in my opinion, I was very much robbed of motherhood. And my every action was scrutinized under a microscope. I walked into the family court system feeling like a darn good mother. My daughters were my life, and everything that I did revolved around them. If you look at my early years of motherhood, and even to this day, I went the healthy granola route, researching everything, reading every book, switching to all natural cleaners in my house, only organic food. I handmade all of their baby food, their food as toddlers. We attended every mommy and me class under the sun in my community. They received socialization. I taught them baby sign language. I did all the things because it was important to me. I took this role so seriously. And I truly believed, and I still believe, motherhood is the most important job I've ever been given. And so to have my interactions, and I'll say, I'm not perfect. Geez, I make mistakes all the time. But I have yet to meet a perfect parent. So to have my interactions with my children dissected and analyzed by people who were not qualified. It's maddening to be made to feel that my relationship with my daughters was problematic because we are so bonded. What planet are we on when we are criticizing a mother's bond with her children? Then you have the flip side of that, my ex-husband who never participated in my pregnancy, in our daughters' lives, or in parenting. He received 5 gold stars by the family court system just because he had a pulse, just because he was alive. Good job, you. It defies logic. So to watch my daughters go from being happy, confident little girls to being manipulated, abused, neglected, used as pawns by a sick, twisted person, it's gut-wrenching and it's challenging. And then every time his actions were brought to light, someone within the family court system would take his slate, make it shiny clean, and then hand it back to him, telling him, great job, go you, go give it another try. And, I have a dear friend, and she's also in the world of advocacy. And yesterday, CPS showed up at her house. The entire investigation was retaliatory, initiated by her ex-partner, and assigned to her case was a very young man, CPS worker in his early 20s, completely oblivious and dismissive, and it was a traumatizing experience. As many of you have been through yourselves. I know we went through 3 full CPS investigations, and it causes you to live on edge. Every single knock at the door, every time you walk up and there's a card on your door, your heart sinks. Sometimes it's just somebody advertising their landscaping services or wanting to paint your house at a reduced rate. But walking up to your front door and seeing a card on your door, many of us live in a different world, and it's terrifying and traumatizing. So she sent me a photo of her refrigerator afterwards titled CPS Fridge. And it was so powerful because it's very much our reality when we're living in this system. Even though this other party is abusive and it's like being assigned your own personal terrorist, we are the ones on high alert, making sure the right amount of fruit and vegetables are in the refrigerator, that we didn't leave a wine glass sitting out from the night before, just because you never know who is going to show up at your door and judge your entire life. And these people tend to wield a great deal of power. So the second part of this question is very much separate and needs to be kept separate. How do you help your child to feel empowered? If we are trying to empower our children with the goal of giving them a voice in the system or up against the narcissist or toxic parent, I personally feel it's important to reel ourselves back in a little bit. I understand why you would want to do that, and I'm guilty of wanting to accomplish this same thing. However, I have come to understand the importance of separating these things out. So, in general terms, my focus is to empower my children, to create awareness in them, and ensure they know that their voice is the loudest, most important voice in my personal universe. I want them to go forward into the world, eyes wide open, breaking cycles, and recognizing what healthy looks like and what toxicity looks like. If I go in with guns blazing, wanting to empower my children so that they will be heard by my ex-husband or by minors counsel or anyone in the family court system, I risk having that backfire on me in a really big way. I will likely be accused of coaching. I will be accused of alienating, bunch of junk science, and you can read all about our position on this topic. You can Google the term, please stop saying alienation. It is very much the father's rights movement, and mothers are using it without understanding how damaging that word and that movement is to all of us. So, back on track. I will be accused of having a vendetta against my ex-husband. I will be accused of not encouraging the relationship between my ex and our children. I will be accused of being too enmeshed with my children, gatekeeping, being a helicopter parent. The list goes on and on. And these things are very much a recipe for disaster in the family court system. And if you have been labeled as, a gatekeeper or too enmeshed, those words cause me to be on high alert. If you are still early on in your case and you're worried about those accusations, that is a fast track for them to say you are alienating. And we do have an online course. If you go to the One Mom's Battle website, click online courses, and one of those is safeguarding against claims of alienation. If someone can only do one of my courses and they are early in their battle, that is the one I would recommend. So, when it comes back to this topic, two things come to mind. Number one, managing my expectations. And number two, determining what is in my control. And then both of those things are sprinkled with a heavy dose of radical acceptance. We're right in the middle of my 8-week coach training program. And I pulled a quote from one of the students when we were talking about this topic because it summed it up so well. So many people struggle with radical acceptance. And if you are not familiar with this term, I highly encourage you to find Dr. Ramani's videos, Ramani, on this topic. And she's a wealth of information. But the quote is, "Radical acceptance is not defeat. It is taking ownership of what you can control and accepting that there are things outside of our control." And that really, I've heard it described a variety of ways, and that really sums it up in a powerful way. As parents, we should be working to empower our kids each and every day. We want to send them out into the world equipped to deal with the things we didn't even know existed, because when I was growing up, we didn't even talk about these things. I didn't know what boundaries were. I was never told to trust my intuition. So I wasn't equipped to go up against toxic humans. I went out giving people the benefit of the doubt, and sometimes that can really backfire. So, I feel that we have an even bigger responsibility than most to empower our children because their genetic gene pool involves a very unhealthy individual. And so it feels like a lot of pressure on us. It's finding balance in that, and between genetics and then nature and nurture both at play here. Not only do they share genetics with this person, but then they're over in that environment and receiving very toxic messages, damaging messages, and so we have a lot to counter on that. So when it comes to empowering our kids, we have to remember that as grown adults, most of us did not even feel comfortable using our voices in tense situations or with people who we knew were not safe. So our expectations about our children standing up to their unhealthy parent, it's not realistic. It's not a fair expectation to put on them. And in many situations, it can be downright dangerous for them to have a voice and for them to stand up to this other person. And then on the other side of that, our children should not be forced to talk to family court professionals. It's a very unnatural environment. It's intimidating. It's scary. We all know this because we experience it. And our children are at even more of a disadvantage because they don't understand the system. They shouldn't have to understand the system. So when I hear people wanting their children to rush into a GAL and be loud and vocal about their unhealthy parent, I have a lot of compassion because this is likely a desire that's born from desperation and helplessness. And I am guilty of being in that exact place at multiple junctures. But we have to remember that our children likely share similar thoughts, feelings, concerns, and fears about the other parent. But again, they're at more of a disadvantage than we were because they don't have life experience on this. They aren't able to properly articulate these issues, and they are carrying around a toolbox that is pretty empty. So, what are the answers? What are the solutions? For me, it's going back to the drawing board and rewriting my goal. It's determining what's in my control. I have no control over whether or not my 10-year-old daughter tells other people how neglectful her other parent is. And if I try to force that and try to control that, I'm going to present very poorly. I'm likely going to be accused of coaching at a minimum, as we discussed earlier, and it could really have a detrimental effect on my case. So it would be empowering my children in general terms, completely separate from this toxic environment of court or their other parent. We want to encourage and empower their voice. When they speak, we are fully present. We're looking them in the eyes. We're validating their feelings. We are truly listening. We're repeating back to them so they know they've been heard and they walk away knowing that I am their safe space. When I'm validating them, I'm not interjecting my expectations on how they should handle the situation. Instead, I'm saying things like, that sounds very difficult. Do you have any ideas on how you are going to handle the situation? Letting them know we believe in you. We believe, you're capable. When my children would come to me with things that involved the unhealthy parent and I struggled to respond in a court appropriate way, because sometimes these things catch you off guard. And I had to push pause and remind myself that I don't have to have all the answers. And sometimes I could be honest with them about that. I'm not really sure how to respond to that. And I would repeat back what I heard, validate how they are feeling about it. It sounds like you're really upset about that. That must be really tough. You could also say things like, I'm not really sure what the answers are. I've never encountered anything like this, but hey, you know what? We're scheduled to talk to Miss Sue, the therapist, on Tuesday night. Maybe we can ask her to help you walk through this situation, and maybe she can help you to come up with some ideas so that if this happens again in the future, you may know how to respond better or in a way that feels true to who you are. And in situations like this, when it does involve the child's therapist, I may initiate a call or an email to the child therapist and deliver very factual information about the conversation and admit that, when this was presented to me, I really wasn't sure how to respond, but I told little Amy that it may be a good topic to talk to Miss Sue about on Tuesday night. And this does a couple of things. It initiates the conversation in a factual way without me interjecting my own feelings or bad-mouthing the other parent. It's admitting to the therapist that I don't have a rule book and that I'm not sure how to navigate this, which humanizes me to the therapist. And it's also bringing her in as a professional, showing that I value her expertise, someone who's trained in situations like this. And it's giving her an idea of what we are up against without sounding like I'm bad-mouthing the other person. And then the bonus to all of that, it's documented. And I hear and I read the comments from so many of you that you're not able to get a therapist for your child. The other party blocks that. And unfortunately, that's very common because bringing in a professional who could potentially see behind their mask is a huge threat. So, you may want to connect with a child therapist that you can meet with without your child present once a month, just to help you fill your toolbox. And or bounce these things off of them, how would you respond to that? So in general terms, as a parent, my goal is to model empathy, boundaries, self-care, how to use my voice in situations that are difficult. And when we are working behind the scenes to empower our children and show them what healthy looks like through our own behaviors and actions, and through conversations that are never directed at the other parent, but in general terms, it's a much healthier route to our children developing strong voices, strong boundaries, recognizing red flags, listening to their intuition, all of those things. For me as a mom, aside from him, I want my children's voices to be so loud and so strong that when they get to the point of feeling empowered and using their voice in a situation that they really have a lot of energy about, regardless of what it is, that their voices and their words are heard. There was another coping mechanism or analogy. I used to visualize myself on a path, and my daughters were walking on a parallel path. And I had to have faith that the path they were on had purpose. And I had to use this analogy to be able to cope because there were so many things that felt out of my control and you feel so helpless. And I will say I cringe when I hear that pain has purpose and everything happens for a reason. First of all, I don't believe that's true. I think that can be a really hurtful statement, gaslighting, invalidating. But in my personal situation, relevant to this topic, it was applicable and it was helpful. I'm a firm believer that every single day we're presented with opportunities to talk to our children and show them what healthy looks like and what unhealthy looks like. And you never know where these situations, where these opportunities come from. It could be a television show we're watching, interacting with people in public, from our children's daily experiences at school or in friendships or extracurricular activities, even sharing something that happened to you at work with a boss that's really unhealthy. Maybe everyday situations filled with opportunities to have these important conversations that go on to empower our children, over. If you've heard me talk about anything related to kids, you know that I'm a huge fan of the bucket books. And these are by by Carol McCloud, McCloud. And Have You Filled a Bucket Today? The concept is that we all have a bucket. There are some people in life who take from our bucket. They're mean, they lie, they hurt people. These are bucket dippers. And then there are other people who are bucket fillers and actions. They love us. They show that through their actions. They're kind, they're honest, bucket fillers. And so those are great tools to incorporate in. They even have a baby bucket book, so you can start the concept early. They have, books for older kids growing up with a bucket full of happiness. She has another book called Bucket Dippers and Lids, which kind of boundaries. So those are fantastic books. I have my book that I wrote. My aunt co-wrote this with me and input from my daughters. And this is a book that can travel back and forth between your child and a trusted adult, like a therapist. And it has lots of prompts, things that they can, prompt them and about, even if it's not divorce, even if it's a death in the family, things like that. And that book is called Lemonade Life. And I'm also a huge fan of Dr. Wayne Dyer, and he has a series of books for kids too. I love this one, Unstoppable Me. Other things I did with my kids, affirmation cards. My daughters have come out with their own stack of affirmation cards. You can get these on their website. It's called pinkfireworks.com. But back when I was a single mom and I could not afford to buy affirmation cards anywhere, we made our own. So you can do this too. I just bought little color paper. I printed out a bunch of affirmations to empower them. And they glue sticked them onto the cards. And every day we would pull a new card. So those are some great ideas. My sister reminded me that I used to do gratitude jars, and we still do actually. So every year on January 1st or somewhere around that week, I buy a new huge jar, and we have stacks of them. And they're pretty vases and things like that. And we put things in there that we're grateful for. So if we went to an amusement park and it was a great day, we'd put our tickets in there. A kind note that a friend or a teacher gave them would go into the gratitude jar. And someday when we sit down and look at all of those, I hope, that those are such positive, affirming memories and experiences for them, because I know they were for me. And, if you're going through this, if you relate to anything we've talked about here today, my heart goes out to you, because, I'm actually thankful when people don't understand. I know it can feel frustrating, when you're trying to explain to people and they're looking at you sideways and they don't get it. I had to get to a place where I'm grateful that they don't get it, because I wouldn't wish this journey on anyone. But, please know I do get it. I wish I could, talk to each and every one of you individually, because I know every situation is so different and so painful and so many variables. If you are in need of help, I'm not currently taking coaching or consulting clients. However, there's an amazing group of people that I have personally trained. They are high conflict divorce coaches certified through my program. And if you are in need of someone to come into the trenches with you and really look at your situation and help you get into a mindset of strategy and help document or help work on your communication or your presentation, whether it's role playing prior to mediation, whatever it is, they get it, because 99% of them have personally lived it. And you can connect with one of those by going to HC for high conflict, divorcecoach.com, and then click find a coach. And I always like to emphasize, we know that it only takes one person to create a high conflict situation. And we work hard to educate the courts on that. Unfortunately, we're not going to get around that high conflict label that they give us. But we can work to educate them that it only takes one person to create a high conflict situation. So thank you for joining me. Take care, and we will see you next week.